Hello, this is Chris Brown of Brown Bear Studios, and I recently developed this side-scrolling shooter game, Health Food Frenzy, for Kendall College of Art and Design. And we targeted the web, iOS, and Android platforms, and each platform connects to its own leaderboard and achievement system, which is what I'm going to show you a little bit about. So if I go ahead and crank up the music and start to play our game here. Flying around with our hero character, we get points by collecting healthy items, shooting unhealthy junk food, but I'm just going to go ahead and run into the next unhealthy food that comes my way so I can end the game somewhat quickly. Again, this was built using Flash with the Starling framework to get fantastic frame rate on mobile devices. And we can see that it loads this leaderboard showing that I scored 101 points. It already has my name in there. I can submit the score. And I can see the high scores for the day, for the week, for the month, and of all time. Pretty cool, right? I close it. Actually throws an ad, which is a nice feature. The multimedia system that I'm using on the web for the leaderboard actually has a nice distribution system, and it's free to sign up for. We can add ads throughout your game to help monetize things. And if I switch over to the mobile device view, you can see here we have an iPad with the game paused, ready to end with one more collection of an unhealthy item. And you can see it's welcoming back, opening the game center, and you can see, perhaps in this video webcam view, but you can see there's a leaderboard, and we can see the different achievements that I'm able to get, bronze, gold, and silver. And then from here I could actually also challenge other game center members. And then we have a Android 7-inch device in the same situation, so we go ahead and end that game. And this automatically opens the Google Play game services, and you can see that there's achievements that we actually unlocked, a silver achievement there in that game. You can close that and take a look at the leaderboard. And again, I can see who's leading within my Google circles as well as publicly overall. So in order to begin programming these leaderboards into your Flash game, the first step is that you need to create an account and add your game to each of the respective developer centers. So for the web, again, I use this mokimedia.com, which is a popular and free Flash portal and publication system that has great leaderboards and achievements. And once you add your game, it's relatively straightforward to add your game and fill out all of the information, the game profile and all. And then you go into the scores area and you can set up your high score leaderboard, and we have it's numerical. Highest is the best score, and then we have some basic achievement values for 500, 1,000, and 2,000 points for lowest, middle, and top achievements. Okay, and then for iOS, we want to connect to iTunes Connect using your Apple or your iOS developer membership. And once you have your game added in here, then you can actually manage the game center attributes on here and create a leaderboard, which we have done. Again, setting up the values. And then we're also able to set up the individual achievements. So here we have a bronze, silver, and gold achievement set up. All right, so we have to set up all this functionality on the developer side of things on the web before we code any action script in our game. And then for Android, we have the Google Play app publishing console. So the same thing here. We have the Game Services Center, and we can create our game and deal with all of the leaderboards, giving us certain IDs to use in the game and achievements. The Google Play Game Center needed at least 5 achievements rather than 3, so I added a Master and an Untouchable for 3,000 and 5,000 points respectively. So once you have all of these set up, then we can go ahead and start adding the code into your Flash game. So again, this game was built using the Starling framework with Flash to give unsurpassed GPU frame rate, 60 frames per second on mobile devices, but this functionality, these leaderboards and achievement centers, will work on any Flash game. So starting out, we'll start with just adding the Multimedia web one to the for the web version. Like I said, you want to go set up your account on multimedia.com, and once you have, then you can actually get all of the action script. Well, the first step you want to do is you actually want to download the Moki API, and you want to take the Moki class folder that's in there and add it to the root class path in your Flash project, which will give your ActionScript access to those classes. And once you have the Moki API, then inside of your game, in your game center, you can actually go into your leaderboard. Let's choose Edit. Actually, let's go back and choose ActionScript and ActionScript 3, and it's right here. It's actually going to give us the 2 pieces of code, one for initializing and then one for actually calling the leaderboard, right here with all of the correct codes and authentication and everything inside of it. So all you'll have to do is grab the initial part that you want to put as soon as your game begins, the earliest thing you do, so it can start initializing as needed. And then at the end of your game, typically, when you want to launch the leaderboard, then you'll paste in the other part. Again, you'll replace these X's with your own Moki Game ID, which will be in that code snippet, and these X's also will be replaced by your leaderboard identification. So you put these 2 in to initialize it, and then this line here to actually launch the leaderboard and submit the game score to it. In this case, I'm using a variable from my game class called game.score. You'll want to replace this with your own score variable. So once you add those few simple lines of code and you publish your game, then there you go. It's all set. The leaderboard displays when the game is finished, and the player can submit their score and compare it to others. It's actually quite nice. The achievements, the initial 3 levels of achievements I set up, are actually built into this leaderboard, so there isn't any additional coding needed. Those will just show when the leaderboard opens if you got enough points to achieve one of those milestones. So from here, now we want to add the iOS and the Android versions. Now for this, we want to connect to the Game Center on iOS and Google Play Game Services on Android. Now, in order to do this, I use the Air native extensions from Milkman Games. Now, these are not free, but they are extremely good and extremely easy to use and have a lot of functionality, and maybe the only way to do this without actually getting in and writing native code yourself with Flash and Adobe Air. So these are the Game Center extension is $69.99. The Google Play Games Air extension is $49.99. Like I said, it's very worth the functionality that you get relatively quickly out of this. Again, just like setting up on Multimedia, The first step before you start adding anything is you make sure, and like I showed you, go into iTunes Connect through your iOS developer membership, which is $99 a year, and then go into the Google Play Developer Console, which is a one-time $25 fee, and you add your game, fill out all of the game publishing requirements, and then just fill out the leaderboard and the achievement sections, which again are relatively straightforward and easy to configure and understand as you're going through and following the directions on the sites. So once you have all of those, all your game set up and the leaderboard and achievements set up on the back end and the developer consoles, and you've purchased the two native extensions, and you want to take those native extensions ANE files and add the paths to your ActionScript settings in your Flash project, which again will give the ActionScript access to the classes in those native extensions. So now we can begin adding the code for the two app versions. Now, it's important to realize that when we're developing a game for all three platforms, that with one code base, that you only run the code that's relevant for that particular platform that's current to avoid errors and other undesired effects. So what we're going to do after we import all of our classes for our two native extensions, we're also going to import this flash.system.capabilities, and this is going to allow us to check the Flash player type and determine if it's the desktop or the web version. Now, the desktop version is the Adobe Air version, which is what's used in apps. So if it's desktop, then it's an app. If it's not, then it's on the web. So what we're doing is we're setting this Boolean variable isApp to true if the capability is desktop. So then we know at runtime whether we're running an app or whether we're running on the web. So then we go ahead and check and say if it's an app, then we're going to go ahead and initialize the correct game center. These isSupported, GameCenter.isSupported and Google Games.isSupported methods, these are included in the native extension. So if this is an app, then first we're going to check and see if we're on iOS, if the Game Center is supported, and if it is, it's going to go ahead and initialize the Game Center. Alternatively, it's going to check and see if we're on Android, if Google Games is supported, and if it is, it's going to go ahead and create and initialize the Google Games. And if it's not an app, if it's on the web, then this is where we have that same code. This is just added to what we did up here, all right, these same two lines to initialize our web version, our Moki Media system. Those will initialize if it's not an app. So this is now our full initialization script at the very beginning of our game to make sure that the correct leaderboard system is initialized. Then when we get to the end of our game where we want to actually launch the leaderboard, then we'll use the same technique and check and see if it's an app. And then if it is, then we'll check again to make sure the Game Center is supported. And there's actually a further check with iOS that if the Game Center is available. And then if it is, then we'll call this function that I defined, launch Game Center. Alternatively, we'll check and see if Google Games is supported if we're on Android, and if we are, then we'll launch the Google Games leaderboard. And finally, if it's not an app, and then we must be on the web, then we're going to go ahead and use this same launch code from above to launch the Moki Media leaderboard and add the game score. So now once we've done that, now let's take a closer look at these app launch methods because they're a little bit complicated. What these launch methods do is they consist of nested functions and they authorize the leaderboard. So if this first one that encompasses this whole area just to launch the iOS leaderboard. Initially, launch Game Center, this is the function we created, and then we set up a couple of event listeners, whether the authorization to the Game Center succeeds or fails, and then we actually call the method to try and authorize the Game Center. If it fails, we just simply trace out an error, and having that in there allows us to avoid an IO error, input error. And if it does succeed, then we set up another couple of event listeners for whether submitting the score for the current game is reported or failed. And then we actually submit the score, and we have again my variable game.score. You'll want to replace this with your own game's variable. And then this will take your leaderboard name that you named in the iTunes Connect Game Center managing area. And then if the score failed, then again we just trace an error out explaining it and stopping from being an IO input error. And if the score is in fact reported, then we have one more set of nested functions that sets up whether the leaderboard view or the Game Center view is opened or closed, and then we actually launch the leaderboard in the Game Center. And again, it takes the leaderboard name. Now, right now, I just have trace functions if the view is opened and when the view is closed. At this point, that's all we need. The leaderboard will open, the user can interact with it, and then close it as they choose. Now, in my game, I'm actually muting the sound because I'm already in a menu state where I don't need to pause the game. But in some cases, you may want to pause and then unpause the game. But this is a good place to handle those kind of game actions that you want to change as the leaderboard opens and closes. So then there's a very similar setup for the launch Google games. It's not exactly the same, but it's 90% close the same. So when we submit the score, again, we submit our ID here and then our game.score. And this time on the Google Play Center, we actually launch on the iOS Game Center, the leaderboard and the achievements are two tabs of the same window, so we only have to make one call. In this case, we're actually opening the leaderboard and then opening the achievements on top of it. So you actually have to close the achievement window and then close the leaderboard window underneath. Okay, and then finally the achievement, so that handles all three leaderboards. Again, on the web, it just simply opens up with our code here, and then with the two app versions, we have our self-created function, the launch functions, which then handle all of this nested functionality to authorize and then submit and then open and account for any errors along the way. And that opens our leaderboards. And then finally we have the achievements. Now with the Moki Media on the web, the achievements, like I said, are actually built into the leaderboard and calculated through the leaderboard, so we don't have to worry about those. But with both app versions, they require the achievements to be explicitly reported in the game. So as I showed you, I set up a bronze, silver, and gold on the iOS, and then on Android I added a master and untouchable because it required 5 rather than 3. And what I've done is each time that the score is updated in my game, so every time the player either collects a good item and earns 10 points or shoots a bad item and earns 1 point, every single time that score is incremented, I call this check achievements function. And what this does is, again, we're checking to see if it's an app. Now there's no else beyond the end of that because the achievements are handled automatically with the web version. So if it's an app, again, we're checking to see if we're on iOS and using the Game Center, or if we're in Google Games on Android. And within that, I created a Boolean flag variable for each achievement so that we can see, here's where I have hard-coded my achievement values. So if the point total, so every single time the points are incremented, we check this function. If the point total is greater than or equal to 500 and the bronze achievement has not already been achieved, we don't want, once you get over 500, to ping the achievement every single time, then it goes ahead and flags the achievement to have been achieved so that it won't happen anymore. And then we use this report achievement method to report, this is the name of the achievement I have in the iOS iTunes Center, iTunes Connect Center, and then this is the achievement value. There's an arbitrary value that all achievements in a game can add up to 1,000. I just have each one giving 100. They don't have much value in my game. But then, so if it's not bronze, if it hasn't already gotten a bronze, then it'll check and see if the score, and you'll win that achievement. If you have already gotten bronze, then it skips right past this and sees if you've gotten silver yet, or sees if you've gotten gold yet. And the milestones are 500, 1,000, and 2,000. And then down here we have the exact same setup for the Google Android achievements, where it checks and sees if you don't already have the achievement and the scores are set. And then again, I added master at 3,000 points and then untouchable at 5,000 points. But each step of the way, once you get the achievement, the Boolean flag is set to true, so it will no longer ping the achievement after you've already gotten it once. And that is a way that allows you to go through, and as the score increments, go ahead and send the correct unlock achievement method to the Google Play Game Center. And again, here, this is a number that, if we go take a look at our achievements, this is this ID for each individual achievement. Once you set it up in the back end, that you'll be able to add it to into your ActionScript code, and it will unlock the correct achievement. So I hope that'll help give you a good start on adding these leaderboard and achievement functionalities into your game, but it's definitely worth noting that these should not be thought as limited only to gaming, that there are endless possibilities for use in education and training and many other disciplines, wherever you have groups of people working together, competing. There's different ways to go ahead and keep track of this type of information regardless of the type of application, game or otherwise, that it's coming from.